Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain with the Sound on Stage. Today I'm going behind the curtain with Doug Fahl. Doug is a familiar face and name on the Seattle theater scene. He is an actor and producer, editor for Mild Media Studios. He's a YouTuber with his Augmented Actor channel, which wealth of information. I know, Doug, we talked to you about that before when we did the Heilman and Haber podcast with
Right.
you. But today we're here to talk to you about your latest endeavor, directing Merrily We Roll Along, the Sondheim piece over at Second Story Rep. So first of
Yes.
all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
And nice to see you and talk to you again. It's always a pleasure. So I want to get into the show a little bit. So Merrily We Roll Along was one of those rare Sondheim pieces that really didn't do too well on Broadway when it premiered. It closed really early, and there was negative reviews, and it's been kind of sporadic through the years, different versions of it. And I know there's a revival on Broadway now, which is fairly popular, due in part to its particular cast. But given that, how did the decision come about to roll this one out for Second Story season? And how did you get aligned with it?
Well, I have really loved this musical since it first came out. Even though it was considered a flop on Broadway, I had the cast album. It was one of the first CDs I ever owned, and I listened to it obsessively. I did this production in college, and it was, not so great production, because it still suffered. The script still suffered from a lot of the flaws of the original production, and it's been workshopped many times since. I got involved because I was originally supposed to direct Star Mites at Second Story, but then COVID hit. And so that got reassigned to another director. And Mark promised that he would let me pick whatever show I wanted to do for the following
Mark
season.
being
Mark Chenovic,
Mark Chenovic, artistic director at Second Story.
that's right, who wears many, many hats at
Mm.
Second Story. And so basically, I pitched this. I had a list of about 10 shows I was interested in. This was at the top of my list. Um, and he immediately said, "Oh, yes, that's a great idea." And Britt Boyd, who is playing Mary Flynn in this production, has been trying to pitch Merrily We Roll Along to Mark for 10 years now or something. And it just keeps getting pushed off and pushed off. But because it's doing such gangbusters on Broadway right now, and the script has been revised and songs have been added and stuff, it's finally reached a point where it's considered good theater.
Yeah, it is, and your production is very good. Let's talk about before we get into the show itself, the roles. So it's a small creative team. You've got yourself, you've got Mark, who, like you were saying, wears a bunch of different hats: set designer, lighting, sound. Uh, I know you've got a musical director
Kim
on this
Douglas
one,
is our
Kim
music.
Douglas. Now, did you also do choreography as well?
I
Who?
did, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not high-end dance or anything, but yeah, I staged all the musical numbers as well.
Okay, awesome. And how was it working with Mark? Especially is it easier to work with one person who's kind of responsible for all those creative touches, or maybe contrast that with working with a team of people where you've got one lighting person over here, a sound person over here?
Yeah, I haven't done too much directing of big productions. In fact, most of the productions I've directed have been with Mark. Um, And I know, though, as an actor, that when you have a team of designers and stuff, you have a lot of production meetings, and you also can kind of go in knowing what the designs are going to be up front. Whereas with Mark, we get together, we throw out ideas, and it's sort of a process. I'll stage a little something, he'll come and watch it, and I'll go, "Oh, that gives me an idea. Here's some set pieces. Let's go this
Okay.
direction." And then he'll be building the set as we're moving along, and then adding lights during tech week. And yeah, and Mark is amazing. I've known Mark since he was a teenager, and so we've been friends, old friends, I guess, like in the show, for a long, long time. And at Second Story, he truly does everything.
Mhm.
He builds the sets, he makes platforms for 11-piece bands, and he runs lights and sound and costumes and all kinds of stuff. Box office. so
Yeah. Oh, for
so it's
sure. Yeah.
So having a good relationship with him really helped, and the process is totally different than you would expect at any other theater. Some directors might not gel with that process as well as I did, but I'm the kind of guy that can roll with the punches, and I trust Mark's vision and his abilities to deliver results, and he trusts me as a director, so it really was simpatico.
Excellent. Well, the set is striking, and you've got a bar. It's kind of multiple locations, and the central figure. I remember pointing this out in my review is this backwards clock, and
Yeah.
that's projected kind of on the floor and in the back, and the show is really all about time, but it's time almost inverted,
Mhm.
because rather than starting at the beginning and watching time progress, you're going backwards. You're starting out with the end really, and you're working backwards. My question is from a director and your experience with acting as well. It would seem to me that normally the way each scene informs the next scene, with an actor. So you have an experience in the first scene. Well, that's obviously going to play into how you are in the next scene. But this has to be backwards. You're almost devolving the characters. Could you speak to how you guided the this excellent cast in doing that and how they reacted?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's built into the script and the structure of the story. You're right, it is told in chunks. So one scene is in the late 70s, and then it moves back 5 years and back 3 years and so on until we get to the late 1950s where they first meet. And it's true, you get things will be mentioned in one scene that in the past for the characters, but they're in the future for the audience, and that's always an interesting thing because the way the show is musically written as well, the reprises happen before the main song, so
Hmm.
you get a glimpse of a song, and then you'll see it being built or you see it being conceived later on. Um, I didn't have to do too much coaching with the cast. It's kind of written into the script, but there were a lot of reminders of like, this is why this line is important now because it's going to be referred to later. So we've got to make sure that the audience hears that line, those kind of things.
Excellent. And you're working with a live orchestra or band on stage, correct? With
Yes.
this? So I mean, how was that? Because I know there's always the choice between live music and pre-recorded tracks. I always prefer live music when it can be done. Sometimes it just can't be.
Yeah.
Um, but is it, I mean, in your feeling, is it easier to work with a live group where you can, I mean, gel together? Like you were saying with Mark, it kind of becomes an organic process. Is
Right.
that the way it is with a live band as well?
Yeah, Second Story mostly does live instruments. I haven't known them to do taped stuff other than maybe in a play or something. Um, but yes, it's definitely a lot more helpful with, especially with Sondheim, because there's such timing and such cueing that needs to happen, and a lot of lines that go interlude lines that happen during the middles of songs. So there's a lot of vamps, and pre-recorded music would just be a disaster, I think. But the band in this is awesome. It's such a big brass Benny Goodman type,
Mm,
production with brass and woodwinds and strings and two pianos and even typewriters and
yeah.
stuff in the song. So there's a lot of elements, and this is probably one of the biggest bands that they've had at Second Story. There's 11 pieces in this band, and it just sounds fabulous. I think I was
Well,
very pleased with how it turned out.
yeah, the sound of the band, the sound of the group singing, I mean, individually and together, it's a really nice job, between you and Kim handling those pieces. But I did want to say, so I went to see it opening night, and opening night you were called in, I guess, for the whole weekend to fill in for the role of Joe, which is not a minor role.
No,
Um,
it's one of the principles. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, you handled it really well. I love the accent, love the mannerisms. Um, is a director kind of the best person to be I mean, in a best position to be a super sub or a super swing because you're so intimately connected with the script that, you know, can you jump in a little more easily than somebody else could if you have to?
I would say it would be a lot easier in this case for me to jump in than asking somebody else to do it without knowing anything, the staging, the blocking, and all the set changes that have to happen. But it was a bit of a challenge. I'm very familiar with the show, and we were in a pretty good place when we found out that Stephen, who plays Joe, got sick. So I had 4 hours to prepare before. Luckily, I got to do it without an audience one time, so I could find all the areas that were difficult to do. But if any role had to go out, that was the one that was the blessing in disguise, because it's my age range. It's a role it's a little bit smaller than all the lead roles. So yeah, it was a challenge, but the cast was very supportive, and I switched off my director role, and so the last two runs, they didn't have any notes. I was just backstage saying, I think you could do this, and I think you could do that, which I'm sure they loved. But they were more like telling me,
the rare occurrence when another actor can actually give direction to
exactly.
other actors on stage.
You never want to do that. But but they were giving me notes more than anything. They were like running lines with me backstage and helping me out. So it was very, very supportive. And it turned out well, I think, and I'm glad we could pull the show off.
Yeah, and everything's good. Steven's okay. Is he back for this coming weekend?
He is back for tonight's show, and I'm going to be going there early to give him all the little insights that I learned backstage.
Good deal. Well, tell me a little bit about the cast. I mean, a super talented cast from top to bottom. Very energetic. How did they come together?
Well, they mostly just showed up for casting, and I picked them. But there were a few. David Neighbor I had in mind for Frank all along. He's just I wanted a Frank that was. Frank and Gussie are the characters that in the show that are kind of starting out in a really negative space and have made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so it's really hard for an audience to jump into this downer mood with all these characters yelling at each other and having the worst day of their life and then going back. So I wanted a Frank that could capture some sort of sympathy from the audience right off the bat. And David really encapsulates that. And he has to run a range of emotions throughout the whole show, and he's on stage pretty much the whole time too. So he's been a joy to work with and really on top of his game. Alyssa Hope Moss is Gussie. She again is somebody that I really liked her humor and her just vibe, because Gussie can be a really hard character in a lot of productions, and Alyssa brings a lot of fun to Gussie, and you almost kind of like and sympathize with her along the way.
Yeah, she's got kind of I don't know, Elizabeth Taylor vibe to her in a way.
Yeah, she's very voluptuous.
Yeah, and she's got to go. You mentioned David's got to go through some emotional transformation. Her character Gussie does as well. I mean, they all kind of do. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much everybody starts off at rock bottom and goes back. Christian Bolduc plays Charlie, and he's an Olympia actor. He works at Harlequin a lot, and he's just amazing. I think he's just super talented, and he just nails Charlie on the head, and has one of the most difficult songs in the show, Franklin Shepherd Inc., as well.
Which is one of the best, which is maybe my favorite moment in the show. It's early on, and it just really just so much energy that he brings to that, and it's hard. It looks hard.
Yeah, and then the three of them have the typewriting song, Opening Doors, at the end, where they're typing on actual typewriters, and that song goes really fast as well. Britt Boyd is Mary Flynn, and Britt, like I said earlier, has been pitching this show. She's wanted to do Merrily, and when she found out, we talked about pitching the show together, and so she was really excited about that. And she nails Mary. She's a drunk mess at the beginning of the show, and like a just out of college, fresh face at the end. Beautiful work from her. Other cast members, we have Erin Elkins is our young starlet Meg, and plays several other roles in the show. She's really lovely to work with. Emily Corsi as Beth. She just delivers that "Not a Day Goes By" song. Just breaks my heart every time. Oop, sorry, touched my mic. And such a delight to work with. Danny Miller as Mr. Spencer and Anita Cannon as Mrs. Spencer are kind of the adults in the
Yeah.
room. Super. I've worked with Danny before many times, and he's just always a pleasure to work with. And Anita is new to me, but she's just so wonderful on stage and off stage. And then we have Graham Arthur Blair playing Tyler, who I've worked with many times, and he's just such a sweetheart and always has a unique take on all his roles. Rachel Bryn as KT just nails it every time. She's such a professional, and I did Bye Bye Birdie with her a couple of years ago at SecondStory. And then who else was in? Who am I missing? Oh, Sebastian Floyd Hurlbut is Jerome, and some other characters as well. And he is a smart actor. He helps. He's always like asking questions like, "Why would we do this? And why is this important? And
Oh,
how do we manage this?" And he brought so many insights to me as a director. Like, I need to answer that question for myself. It's like, if you're asking it, so is the audience. And I really appreciated his input the whole way. And then we have a young 8-year-old boy who's playing Frank Jr. His name is also Franklin, ironically. So
makes
that's
it
been a
easy.
little, and he's a great little kid.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, you just ran through everybody in the cast. I mean, there's a lot of them play multiple roles, but it's not a small cast. I mean, especially for the size that Second City is. It's not a huge venue. What are the challenges for you to make sure that you can get everybody on stage and in the right place without it feeling too cramped? Because it really never does.
Yeah, I don't know what the secret is other than just trying to keep the bodies moving, keep the pictures changing, um, and the brightness of the costumes really helps. The colorfulness that Mark compiled all those costumes together. Uh, it was interesting process because as we were directing, we had several conflicts. We had a kind of a truncated rehearsal process. And so we had to not only learn the show like it's told backwards, but we had to learn it out of order. So we have all these connecting transition pieces that we would learn like in one night. I would stage all of them, and they were so confused at first, like, which version of this transition am I singing now? And what year do I say in this? And it got to be very confusing. And we had very few run throughs up until like the last couple weeks where we could actually piece it all together with the full cast there. So that was the biggest challenge, not so much staging it, but getting it to make sense in everybody's mind.
And assembling the puzzle pieces in the timeline. It sounds a
Right.
lot like shooting a film, how you do everything out of order, and then you just
Yeah.
except you're all the editors too, putting everything together.
Right. Which is interesting that they're making a movie version of this film.
I did see that, yeah, and I guess that's the popularity of the run on Broadway right now.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's being shot over a course of 20 years so that the characters actually will age, and then they just shoot the last scenes first.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, Sondheim, I mean, let's talk just a second about Sondheim. And there's always been this um, I guess, reputation that he's had for his music being difficult to perform. In what way? I think we hear that, but we don't necessarily all know what people refer to. You mentioned a few things, timing and some things earlier, but what is it
Mhm.
about Sondheim that makes his stuff so tricky?
Well, he kind of talks about his melodies. He pokes fun at the feedback that he would get as a composer when he talks about having hummable melodies and producers wanting hummable melodies like Some Enchanted Evening and whatnot. And Sondheim was kind of, his melodies tend to be a little less accessible on the first listen. They take repeated listenings to really fill in the nuances. Um, but his music is complex. He has different kinds of key signatures and time meters and incidentals in the music. It sounds like he repeats a lot of things, like the Merrily We Roll Along theme or the Into the Woods theme. It gets repeated throughout the show, but each time it's repeated, it's slightly different lyrics, slightly different tempos, slightly different cadences, and time signatures, key signatures, that kind of
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
And so and he uses very complex harmonies, although not so much in Merrily. In Merrily, the challenge is more layered uh, vocals, like four characters each saying the same different things at the same time over the top of each other in like a cacophony of sound. That kind of stuff happens a lot in this show.
Yeah, those are always impressive to me as a somebody who's only acted for a couple of years. I don't claim to be a really experienced actor, but it seems to me that being able to focus on what you're doing singing wise when other people two or three other people are singing completely different things, even to me when one person's singing something different and you have
Right.
some of those things, it seems difficult to keep focus.
Yeah, it can be very challenging, and Sondheim doesn't. It's very unforgiving. If you get off the beat, the whole song can get derailed.
Yeah.
And Kim has tried to build in some safety guards for like when the big group numbers. If somebody gets off, she says, if worst comes to worst, I take the orchestra out and then I pick it back up, yell out bar numbers or something. But luckily that hasn't happened yet during a performance. But yeah, it's very challenging, and there's just no room for your own personal flair or to stretch out passages or whatnot. You have to stay in tempo with the band, especially of this size.
Yeah, and one thing that's always impressed me about Sondheim, and I actually never really picked up on this until I saw an interview with Lin-Manuel Miranda when he was talking about Sondheim and how
Mhm.
he likes to model some of his stuff after Stevens the way he rhymes. I guess he called it true rhymes that he's never really creative with what he's trying to rhyme together. They're always just really solid and precise.
Yeah, he's very good as a lyricist. I think even more so, in my opinion, than as a composer. I love Sondheim's lyrics. They're so clever, and he rhymes in the middle of sentences as well, or he'll throw in three little rhymes before the main rhyme at the end, and or he'll like rhyme something two verses later that rhymes with that or
Yeah.
recalls something. Very very clever stuff. I think Merrily has it's one of the more accessible Sondheim pieces for a first-time audience. The songs are a little bit more catchy. And like you said in your review of our show, which was very kind, by the way, you said that it's kind of a standard Sondheim sound. It recalls Into the Woods, it recalls a little night music. And I would agree, it's not super complex like some of his other scores, but it still is just full of meat and
Mhm.
little details that really have that Sondheim signature on it. And it's one of my favorite Sondheim scores. I think it is probably my favorite Sondheim score. I've just listened to it hundreds and hundreds of times.
Well, it is. I mean, and the entire production is really good. And I urge everybody to come out to Redmond and see it. I think Second Story sometimes is kind of on the periphery of Seattle and may not get as much traffic as some of the other ones that are closer to the city. But this is definitely a show I think people should go out and see. But before I let you go, what is next for you, Doug Fahl,
You know,
after this one?
I don't have anything lined up right now. I'm just, I would like to continue directing. I'm pretty new to this, and I'm pleased that I got these results from my second time out directing, and so I'm just looking for other opportunities. And even as an actor, even with my augmented actor channel, I'm just kind of on a little hiatus right now. Just busy at work, busy with my
Hmm.
folks, that kind of thing,
Yep.
and, and just I'm open right now.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate, and I know a lot of people in the area appreciate the networking that has been done through even your augmented actor channel and the questions you pose on Facebook that there's usually a ton of nice responses for and people who might not ordinarily communicate with each other, professional actors and community actors. That's what my
Yeah,
my bent is. I love when we can get everybody together in one community, and I appreciate what you've done with that. It's definitely an inspiration.
yeah. Yeah,
So
I definitely will keep the Facebook group going. That's that's a daily thing that I
yeah.
really enjoy doing as well.
Okay, well, Merrily We Roll Along runs from open on March 29th, runs through April 21st. So there's a few more weeks left to catch it.
Yeah.
My guest today on Behind the Curtain has been Doug Fahl, man of many hats and talents. Um, so thank you again, Doug, for taking the time today to sit with me and talk about this wonderful show. And for you out there watching, thank you again for joining me behind the curtain. I'm Greg Heilman with The Sound on Stage. And until next time, I'll see you at the stage door.